There was a rule in kitchens not so long ago, and it was simple. Nothing left the house in the trash until it had been a meal at least once. The generation that cooked through rationing, through shortages, through years when a dollar had to stretch from Sunday to Sunday and back again, did not see vegetable peelings as waste. They did not see a stale loaf as something to throw out. They saw ingredients, they saw dinner. And every single week, without thinking twice, they made meals from things that most households today send straight to the garbage. This is 15 of those meals. You already have the ingredients. You are probably throwing them away right now. Number 1, bone broth. Every time a chicken is roasted or a joint of beef is finished, what remains in the pot is not garbage. It is the foundation of one of the most nourishing things a kitchen can produce. Your grandparents would cover those bones with cold water, drop in a halved onion, a few peppercorns, and whatever vegetable ends were sitting beside the stovetop. They would leave the whole pot to simmer for hours until the liquid turned deep amber and rich. The result was kept in the fridge for days, and it formed the base of soups, gravies, and stews all week long. It was also given to children and sick relatives as something that genuinely helped. Throwing a carcass away without making broth from it first was simply not something that happened. Number 2, dripping on toast. When meat was roasted, the fat and dark juices in the bottom of the pan were not tipped down the sink. They were poured into a wide jar, left to cool and set, and brought out the next morning alongside the bread knife. A thick scrape of beef dripping on toast, finished with a pinch of salt and a grind of pepper, was breakfast, a midday snack, and something to keep a working man going through a long afternoon. It cost nothing beyond the bread. The dripping was already paid for when the roast was bought on Sunday. The flavor was smokier and more satisfying than anything that came in a tub from a store. Number 3, ham hock stock. A ham hock is one of the cheapest cuts you can buy. Long after the meat has been stripped away, the bone still has a job to do. Cover it with water, add an onion, a carrot, and a good handful of dried lentils, and leave it to simmer for a couple of hours. That bare bone releases enough depth and smoky richness to turn a pot of plain water into a thick, filling soup that serves 6 people. Your grandparents would have started this on Monday morning and had it ready by noon. Most households today would call that same bone a reason to take the trash out. Number 4, bread pudding. A loaf past its best was never a problem in a kitchen that knew its business. Stale bread was torn into rough pieces and covered in a mixture of milk, beaten egg, a little sugar, and whatever spice was in the cupboard. It was left to soak, then baked in a deep dish until it puffed at the edges and set firm and golden in the middle. What came out tasted better than anything made from fresh bread. The staleness meant every part of the loaf had drawn in the custard all the way through. A whole loaf that would have gone in the trash became pudding that fed the family twice over. The second helping, cold from the fridge the next morning, was often better still. Number 5, potato peel crisps. When potatoes were peeled for the evening meal, the long strips of skin did not go into the compost bin. They were shaken with a little oil, spread across an oven tray, seasoned with salt, and slid into the hot oven alongside whatever was already cooking. In the time it took the potatoes themselves to boil, those skins came out thin, crackling, and deeply savory. Children waited near the oven for them. They cost nothing. They made themselves while the rest of dinner was being prepared, and they came entirely from something that was already destined for the trash. Number 6, vegetable peel soup. Carrot tops, outer cabbage leaves, and celery leaves do not look like much on their own. But combined with onion skins and the tough ends of green beans, simmered together in water with a little butter and a pinch of salt for 30 minutes, they become a broth that is clean and surprisingly sweet. Add a handful of barley and a slice of bread alongside, and it becomes a full meal. Every ingredient in it came from the parts of vegetables that most modern kitchens drop into the compost bin every single evening without a second thought. Number 7. Breadcrumbs and croutons. A loaf gone completely hard was not thrown away. It was grated over a bowl, and the crumbs were stored in a jar on the counter. Those crumbs were ready whenever the week needed a coating for fish cakes, a topping for a casserole, or a binder for a batch of meatballs. Bread that was stale but not yet dry was cubed, tossed in whatever fat was left in the pan, and fried until crisp and golden. Those croutons turned a thin soup into something substantial enough to count as a proper meal. Every slice of bread had a second life. The good kitchens always found it a third. Number 8. Chicken fat. When a whole bird was jointed or a roasted chicken sat cooling on the board, the pale yellow fat from around the cavity was carefully tipped into a small pot and set aside. It kept for days and was used as the cooking fat for the meals that followed. Frying onions slowly in chicken fat produces a richness that vegetable oil simply cannot match. Spread thinly on bread with a pinch of salt, the way households across the country had been eating it for generations. It becomes something that tastes like patience and proper cooking, and it costs nothing because it would otherwise have gone down the sink. Number 9. Bacon grease. After a strip of bacon was fried in the pan, the fat left behind was poured into a small tin kept beside the stovetop. That tin was the first thing reached for when the next meal needed cooking. Fried eggs, pan potatoes, onions softened for a stew. Any savory thing that needed fat went into that tin rather than into a fresh bottle of oil. Generations of American households cooked almost every weekday meal in it. Today, most people wash that same fat away and then spend money on a replacement that tastes of nothing in comparison. Number 10. Leftover oatmeal cakes. Cold oatmeal firms up considerably overnight and becomes a completely different ingredient from the loose, warm version that came off the stovetop. Mixed with a small amount of plain flour and a pinch of salt, patted out flat, and cooked in a dry pan until each side was golden and slightly crisp at the edges. Cold oatmeal made rounds that went with soup with a piece of sharp cheddar or with a scrape of jam in the morning. Leftover oatmeal that would otherwise be scraped into the trash became breakfast the following day in a different form entirely. Most people who tried it preferred it. Number 11. Wilted vegetable fry. A slightly soft zucchini is not something to throw away. Neither is a carrot beginning to go limp or spinach with a little wilt at the edges. These are signals. A hot pan, a little fat, a splash of something sharp or savory, and 10 minutes of attention will produce a side dish or a meal over rice that uses everything up before it turns. Your grandparents understood that most vegetables do not spoil suddenly. They give warning. A good cook learns to read it. Number 12. Citrus peel. Before an orange or a lemon was squeezed, the peel came off first and was put to work separately. Dried strips went into baking. Longer pieces simmered in sugar syrup and became candied peel that kept in a jar for weeks. Finely grated zest went into cookies, puddings, and oatmeal for brightness and fragrance. One piece of fruit provided juice to drink, peel for the baking tin, and dried zest for the weeks ahead. Nothing left the kitchen if it still had something to give. Number 13. Cheese rind stock. The hard, waxy end of a block of sharp cheddar, the part too dense to grate or pleasant to eat on its own, was not thrown away. It was dropped into a soup or a slow sauce during cooking and left to simmer. As the heat worked on it, it softened and slowly dissolved, releasing a deep, savory flavor into the pot that changed everything around it. What looked like the unusable end of something became the ingredient that made the whole thing taste like it had been cooking for twice as long. Number 14. Apple peel and core jelly. When apples were peeled and cored for a pie or a crumble, the pile of scraps left on the board was not waste. It was the natural setting agent, covered with water and simmered until completely soft, then strained through a cloth overnight. The liquid was combined with sugar and a little lemon juice and returned to the heat. What set in jars the next day was a clear, fragrant jelly, sharp and bright, that kept for months and went on toast every morning. A pile of apple scraps became a dozen jars of something genuinely good, made entirely from what would otherwise have filled the compost bin. Number 15. Overripe banana bread. A banana that has gone completely black is not past saving. In baking terms, it has just reached its peak. Mashed into a bowl with flour, a beaten egg, soft butter, and a little sugar, it goes into the oven and comes out an hour later as a loaf that is sweeter, more intensely flavored, and more moist than anything made from a fruit still firm and yellow. The riper the banana, the better the result. What looks like something to throw away is, at that exact moment, the best possible version of what it is. The generation that cooked this way did not think of themselves as resourceful or thrifty. They simply did not see the point of paying for something and then throwing part of it away. Every bone, every peel, every stale end of a loaf represented money that had already been spent. Wasting it meant paying twice. That logic, quiet and practical and entirely without waste, fed families well through the hardest years anyone could remember. Nothing about it has changed. The bones still make broth. The potato skins still make a snack. The only thing that is different is that somewhere along the way, we forgot to make them.